I want to welcome you again to the YouTube program of Walking with God in the Garden. Sometimes as we walk in the garden, we don't always find everything we'd like to see. For instance, today, I went to my garden and the first thing I noticed was that there were a couple of plants disappearing. And when I checked it out, there were gophers working on my plants. I didn't plan on that, but there it was. It could also be that if you're a gardener, you will find that there are insects that invade your plants. They can be very destructive if you don't catch them soon enough. So between gophers and insects, whitefly, also you'll notice that if you don't irrigate properly, your plants will eventually dry up. And they say that if a plant is not healthy, it invites all kinds of destructive elements. So it's important that we keep healthy personally, as well as those plants in our garden. I've mentioned to you that gardening is where we are. Sometimes we might not be in a physical garden. It might be out in our home, maybe on the street, could be in our automobile. Wherever we are there in the presence of the Lord. So I pray that you will find in your walk with God that you will always remember that God is right there with you. As we relate to Him, He has messages for us. And that's one of the things that I try to work on here with this YouTube program. I ask God what He wants me to say. So I'm not always as clear as I should be. Sometimes it takes a lot of spirituality to hear God speak. But I try to in all sincerity. And I pray about that. There are any number of people who are praying for this YouTube program. I'm so thankful for their prayers. But today, we take a look again at this person of Job. Poor Job. One misfortune after the other. Started out with such wonderful, wonderful blessings. Family, friends, recognition, food, all kinds of prosperity. Then one day, it was all taken away. So Job now is sitting there thinking about what's happened. Behind the scene, there is Satan, who is talking with God about Job. And God is talking to Satan about Job. And it's kind of a trial between the two of them. God is saying, Job will be faithful, no matter what. Satan is saying, you just give me an opportunity to test him, and we'll see. So today, I want to read about the last big test in Job's life, brought about by Satan. So we might argue the case, why is it this way? But the Bible has a reason. And it's not my place here today to discuss the theology of it, but I would like to, maybe in the future, little bits and pieces here and there. But today, let's take a look at what happened to Job. And then the reaction on the part of not only his family, but his friends. It says in the book of Job, and I read for you today from the 7th verse of the 2nd chapter. So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord and afflicted Job with painful sores from the soles of his feet to the top of his head. Wow. What a terrible situation. Then Job took a piece of broken pottery and scraped himself with it as he sat among the ashes. I had a friend whom I recently did a funeral for, who I could say looked something like Job. Terrible itch, infection, pain, unbelievable. I'm not saying that that was because God did it or gave Satan the right to do it, but sometimes you wonder about the tragedies that people have. So what is the reaction on the part of his family? Listen to his wife. His wife comes and says to him, "Are you still holding on to your integrity? Curse God and die." I think Job's wife felt so sorry for him that the best thing for Job would be death. So the only thing she could think of is for him to have it out with God. And for that, she believed that God would take his life. Sometimes our spouses, our friends, our family can be so emotionally distraught for us that they would wish somehow the miracle of death would come. I don't blame Job's wife, not for a moment. It's a case of where she was in pity for him. But then he's got 3 friends, and I just want to share with you about them. They came to see him. They heard about all of his troubles. And as they come to him, they met together by agreement to go and sympathize with him and comfort him. When they saw him from a distance, they could hardly recognize him. They began to weep aloud, and they tore their robes and sprinkled dust on their head. Then they sat on the ground with him for 7 days and 7 nights. No one said a word to him because they saw how great his suffering was. We can be thankful when people come to visit us in our sickness and sympathize with us. They sometimes search for words that can give comfort. But Job's wife took a position of wanting Job to no longer suffer by simply dying. The 3 friends came and they saw the terrible condition that Job was in. I had this experience with my father. He had a terrible disease that he picked up from the soil. And when I went to visit him after having been gone for some time, I could hardly recognize my dad. Sores, ulcers, I could see there was nothing but pain there. And frankly, I was like these 3 friends. I couldn't find the words. All I could do was to sit and mourn for my father. I don't know how it is in your life, but I know sometimes we need simply not to say anything, simply just to be there. In my work as a counselor at hospice, I'm often told by the experts that the most important thing that you can do is to say nothing, but to just be there in their presence. Somehow there is a strange kind of communication between us and our fellow human beings. Without words, without any kind of sympathetic gesture, but just to be there. I oftentimes encourage people that that is the best therapy we could ever give to anyone in pain. And I pray today that if you have friends, or if you know people who are suffering, and you go to visit them, don't give them pious platitudes. My advice is sometimes just be there. If they can hear you, and many times they do, we don't oftentimes think so, you might say a word. I'm with you. I love you. I want to visit with you. That can be the most healing gesture of your life and the life of another. And that's probably true of anything that we do here on this earth. There are many people who are suffering, oftentimes without our even knowing it. They're walking down the street. They're sitting in a restaurant. they're alone. All they need is for you to be there. And that's what Job's 3 friends did. His wife took a different tact. She wanted Job out of his misery, pain, because she herself had such pain seeing her husband in that condition. Friends, this is our YouTube program today. I missed 1 week. I was gone. But I will resume this now on a weekly basis, hopefully on Saturday afternoon. So the new week as it begins can be your week. God bless you. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. Here in Southern California, the sun is shining. Gardening is flourishing. So many things to do, for which we are very grateful to God for. Have a good day, and dial in again next week for this YouTube Walking with God in the Garden.